Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Hoff, the WISPbusiness.com editor, and today I'm here with our second virtual luncheon event of the year. This one is our Summer Tourism Outlook, and we're looking at how will Wisconsin take advantage of a post-pandemic visitor surge. If you have ideas for a future luncheon theme, you can send us an email. Just go to WISPbusiness.com, click Contact Us, find the email listed there, and then send us your idea. Before we chat with the stars of today's program, I'd like to give a big thanks to our sponsors. They are also stars in helping get this program together. That's Madison Gas and Electric Company, University Research Park, Wisconsin Technology Council, and the Phelps Hammis Group. Now I'd like to welcome our panel. We've got Department of Tourism Acting Secretary Ann Sayers, Wisconsin Hotel and Lodging Association President and CEO Bill Elliott, and Association of Wisconsin Tourism Attractions President Tom Deal. So I'm thrilled to have the three of you on today. I love hearing about an industry that gets out of state people to spend their money here and boost our local economies. And I've got a ton of questions for you guys. And the audience also submitted questions, and I'll get to those throughout the program. But I think we'll start, we all know that the pandemic hit the tourism sector the hardest. It hit attractions, lodging, hospitality, leisure, all of those great things, especially hard. So why don't you each give me a status report, if you will, on how things are going for the businesses that you guys represent. And Secretary Sayers, we'll start with you. How are our state's tourism industry and economy doing right now?
Sure. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, fellow panelists. Really good to be with all of you today. I'm excited about our conversation. I've been saying that the last time America and the world made it through a pandemic, it was the roaring 20s, and that when we make it through this one, it'll be the traveling 20s. We've been saying that for a few months, and now we're watching as the data starts to pour in here at the first part of this year, and it's true. It is looking to be true. The latest numbers have the number of percentage of Americans looking to travel in the next 6 months are at a peak since the beginning of the pandemic. It's now at 89%. We can already see that for this year. Vacations of 2 nights or more are outpacing the pandemic year of 2020, but they're also outpacing the record-setting year for tourism, which was 2019. So these are really strong indicators that this is tourists, travelers, residents, all looking to get revenge on a year of lost travel, looking to get back out there and find ways to make memories and reconnect with friends and family. And that's going to mean good news for Wisconsin's leisure tourism industry.
Well, that's great news that we've probably all been wanting to hear. And Bill, is this similar to what you're seeing with the hotels and lodging?
In the leisure space, we are. I think in the leisure space, people are very optimistic about the summer. The numbers are going up, especially in the North Woods and in the Door County areas. I think there's a lot of optimism in those markets. Business travel is still very slow for us in our industry. There are certainly a lot of properties that rely on the business travel, group events and whatnot that are going to be a little bit slower. So I think we're certainly headed in the right direction, and we're certainly optimistic. But we know from the data we've seen, once you mix the business travel and everything else, and it'll probably be closer to 2024 before we really see the full recovery back to the 2019 numbers. But right now we're just happy that the line is going up instead of down at this point.
And Tom, you represent tourism attractions. That's pretty broad. So can you give us an example of what all that encompasses and how things are going right now for those businesses?
Well, I wear many hats in the tourism industry, and so I'm going to focus on the attraction-based economy here in Wisconsin Dells as being my thrust. And following Ann and Bill, I'll just reinforce that we experienced a downturn in our room tax last year of 34% and 25% down in our premier resort collections, both of which were devastating to the local economy. I'm happy to report that the first quarter of this year, January 1 through March 31st, blended between room tax and premier resort tax that were about 8.5% ahead of 2019, like Ann had alluded to. There is a lot of pent up demand because people have been sitting home long enough, and we're going to be a big benefactor of that. My biggest worry, of course, is the labor shortage, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But overall, it looks like a fantastic year if we can service our guests. That 2021 will surpass 2018 and 19, which were both excellent years.
Yeah, and I do want to look ahead to the summer and kind of the future of tourism. But before we do that, I do want to take a look back over the past year to ask about losses in the industry. You know, restrictions and consumer behavior that had changed during the pandemic. Was it too much for some of our businesses? Tom, we'll start with you. Was there a casualty rate for attractions?
Well, unfortunately, the only casualty rate is the business that I own, the Tommy Bartlett Show. And the uniqueness of our business having to draw 2,000 people a day for the 100-day season to break even certainly wasn't going to happen last year. And when I made the decision in August of last year that I didn't see the probability of us playing to 2,000 people a day in 2021 was not there. And of course, the biggest risk to any business is uncertainty. And so that's why we had to call it the end of a 70-year run. And it's just, we're one of the casualties, the only one in Wisconsin Dells.
Well, Tom, thanks for sharing that one with us. And yeah, very sorry to hear that. I remember seeing that in the headlines, and it was an iconic sign driving to and from Eau Claire. So anyway, Bill, in the lodging space, low occupancy rates, did that put hotels in some trouble?
Oh, certainly. And for those that did make it, there's still plenty of hotels that are digging out from that. And just to shed some light on it, back in April of last year, we were seeing occupancy rates of below 20%, which is just unheard of. And typically in April in Wisconsin, you're hovering around 50% occupancy rate. So that really put a lot of hotels in a bad position back then, and most were able to hang on. But you know, as when the pandemic first hit and everything started to get shut down, hotels were essential businesses. We were allowed to stay open, but there just weren't many people traveling. So a lot of properties did choose to close their doors at least for a while. There are some that are still closed. I don't have a solid number for you, unfortunately. We don't have good data on who's planning on reopening versus staying closed. But there are properties throughout the state that still to this day don't have their doors open. I'd say more so in the business markets, the people that are relying on business travel and corporate travel. But there are examples of it everywhere. I do think for all the flaws and all the different programs that were out there, I do think that things like the PPP programs and the aid that we've gotten from the state, that's really helped our lodging members keep their lights on, and we're very grateful for that. So there's a long road ahead. It'll be interesting to see if there are more casualties and if there's ownership changes to some of the facilities. I guess we'll focus on the positive right now, and the fact that people are out there traveling and are out there trying to plan their summer trips and getting out of the house again. I think that pent up demand is a really good thing, both for people in Wisconsin that want to come and explore our state, and for people in the surrounding states.
Yeah, and Secretary Sayers, you have a kind of broader look at what's going on in the industry. I'm trying to think of other sectors in tourism that may have been impacted pretty badly, and I'm thinking, like, did we see losses in like agritourism or arts and culture areas?
It was a tough year across the board. Certainly, it demanded more of us as an industry, like you're saying, across the board than we could have ever anticipated. But I will say, and we're heartbroken about the losses like the Tommy Bartlett Show and others. But But I will say that it was a year where the importance of tourism, its value in the overall economy was, I think it's always been there, but man, it really was showcased during those difficulties. And even in a tough year, the U.S. Travel Association had predicted that it would be spending would be down 45% across the board. Here in Wisconsin, it was only down 20%. I mean, that's not good, but it is good to see that us outpacing what was expected. We had over 90 million visitors in the state. We employed still over 107,000 people, our friends and our neighbors that depend, their livelihoods are part of this economy. That's more than the number of people who live in Green Bay. And overall, we also know that Wisconsin's growth is outpacing the national average. So these are positive signs that Wisconsin has what people are looking for, that we're well positioned to make it out of this. I think we should all be very, I guess, grateful is the word. 2019 was a record-setting year. So if 2020 had to happen, we had a really good platform, and we are all united in this thinking of we're going to spring back, and we have what it takes to do that.
Yeah, and that leads me into the news of the day. Secretary, you mentioned this before we got started, that the Joint Finance Committee is taking up some tourism legislation, or looking at some legislation today. Tell me what that is, and what are some of the big things to come out of that if it moves forward?
Yes, my phone is blowing up right now. I think they're taking it up right now. So this is really important. The Joint Finance Committee will determine our next 2-year budget for tourism. It's been very encouraging in these conversations we've been having over the last few months with decision makers, because everyone seems to understand how critical it is to support this industry while we're down. So what we're looking for are 2 major things coming out of this budget discussion today. One, and then both are continuations of the budget we're currently working off of. So prior to the pandemic in 2019, the legislature and governor approved $1.5 million in additional marketing dollars for us to go into new markets. And that has been key. That's exactly what has us in position right now to be competitive with other Midwest states. And we are looking to just build that into our base budget, to just know that one additional 1.5 million is there for future planning. We're in double the number of markets that we were in 2019 during that record-setting year. And it's just good marketing sense that you stay there, that you keep investing in those places. You get more ROI the longer those eyeballs are seeing what we're putting out there. So we're hoping to see that 1.5 come in a permanent way. And then the other big news out of 2019, and it has served us incredibly well, is the Office of Outdoor Recreation. It was created because outdoor recreation has always been a top driver of visitation for Wisconsin. And it's a growing sector of the economy, even outside of tourism, the marketing, the retailers, the outfitters. There's a lot of activity in this space nationally. Wisconsin's outpacing the national average. Growth in outdoor recreation outpaces Wisconsin's overall GDP growth. So we were kind of asking the question, what would happen if we really focused on this? Made that decision in 2019, and thank gosh we did, because the participation levels in 2020 skyrocketed. The office was there to sort of center that, organize that activity, and be there for the manufacturers and retailers who are now raising questions around workforce and supply chain, and also how do we keep people engaged, and how do we continue to make this a growing part of the economy. So today in Joint Finance, we're hoping that legislators will approve that office as a permanent piece of the tourism puzzle. So right now it's due to sunset on June 30th. So that's what we're looking for.
All right, and we'll talk about marketing, and we'll talk about the great outdoors being one of Wisconsin's assets in a minute. But I do want to, Tom, I want to ask you, there's this anticipated surge as we've been talking about, and how are tourism attractions getting ready for that, and what is that looking like right now?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, our biggest challenge right now is how do we service the people that are going to be coming this summer. In a normal year, we have 3,200 J1 students. Right now, we're sitting at about 800. So that's 25% of the J1 workforce is all we have right now. There are some embassies that are opening that hopefully will provide additional bodies. But in this market here, we're anticipating a record year with people coming there. Our big concern is, are we going to be able to service the customers with the service that they expect? There are businesses here that are going to have to address not being open 7 days a week. There are going to be businesses that are not going to be serving dinner and lunch, just the breakfast. And these are all challenges that we have. And it's very frustrating, obviously, when you have all the wheels in motion, the state taking a lead with their marketing, followed with our DMO and the marketing that we spend to be able to bring people to the community. We've got to be able to service them. So there's no simple solution to it, but it is going to be a major task this summer.
Tom, there's also this call to end the unemployment bonus. I mean, has that extra unemployment money kept workers from applying for open positions? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that my personal feeling is that when the federal government enhances to the tune of $300 a week unemployment, which gets people up to about $675 a week, that amounts to about $16.75 an hour. There is a disincentive to go to work. The flip side of it is, and we're seeing it here and have seen it each time the funds are given out, whether it was a $1,200 per person or whether it was the children's thing, we see a surge in our business because people have money in their pockets. So certainly yesterday, the Rules Committee made the adjustment to you have to go out and look for a job before you can get unemployment. That has been in existence for the 55 years I've been in this industry, and it was put suspended because of the COVID. There's no reason that should be the case now. Obviously, the eliminating the enhancement from the federal government would go a long way as well, but that's in the governor's hands. So we'll see what happens. Is all I can say, and it's not just the tourism industry. It's across the state of Wisconsin in manufacturing, agriculture, you name it. There's a tremendous labor shortage, and you can't operate businesses if you don't have a staff. So that's the look from here.
Yeah, and Bill, what are your thoughts on that too? The J-1 visa program also impacts hotels and lodging. I'm sure you have thoughts on this unemployment bonus as well.
Right. I think Tom really hit the nail on the head with all of his comments there. The J-1 piece of it makes it extra challenging for us. Prior to the pandemic, the labor market was already tight, and we know that. But now at this point and where we are with the pandemic, people should be looking for work, and there's no reason not to be. So I think we know that it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to fix all of our problems, but it is time to get people back to work. And when they're making $16 an hour, not working, it's hard to incentivize them to come back. But I think it will. We're going to get there. I think that $300 is in the governor's hands, like Tom said. But the requirement to be searching for a job is equally as important. And now that the vaccines have rolled out and more and more people are getting vaccinated, I'm optimistic that we'll see more workers come into the workforce. But I do think that is going to be our biggest challenge all summer long, is being able to make sure that we're staffed up and we're able to serve all of our members' properties. I did talk to some of our members from around the state that are struggling with this, and I know there are some hotels that are closing off rooms at this point just because they don't have enough people to turn them over and to clean them up and get them ready for the next guest. So it's something that we haven't really seen, at least for a long time, and a new challenge, and one that we'll face. But we're going to have to get creative in the way we find employees and hire employees. And I think that the one good thing that comes out of it is it gives us another opportunity to talk about how great the hospitality industry is, and how great a career in the hospitality industry is. There are a lot of great career paths, from sales management to food and beverage, becoming a chef or a director of operations or a hotel general manager. All different types of areas that you can grow in our industry. So it is probably going to be the number one challenge for us moving forward, I would say.
And Secretary Sayers, I mean, I know you're not workforce development, but maybe your agency, the Department of Tourism, are you guys collaborating on anything, or are you advocating for some kind of like workforce initiatives? What's your role with that?
Yeah, well, this is a really important conversation. I very much appreciate Tom and Bill's comments on it. They definitely are on the front lines of it. We're really focused on making sure that while this conversation continues and while individual businesses and as an industry, we arrive at some solutions, that we're making sure the visitor knows that they can continue to expect a high quality experience in Wisconsin, that our hospitality, our generous spirit is at the ready, even as we are, fighting to come out of this pandemic at full force.
And along the lines of workforce, I'm hearing you guys throwing out some numbers out there, the $16 an hour. And so we have to talk about minimum wage. The governor wanted to increase that in his budget. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but it doesn't mean that businesses aren't already doing it. And so right now there's this upward trajectory in wages, especially at larger chain establishments. So I'm curious your thoughts on that situation, and also your thoughts on if Wisconsin's small businesses in tourism can compete. And Secretary, why don't we start with you?
Well, again, we're focused on the consumer at this point, but I loved what Bill said, and this is sort of the silver lining of this conversation about there are real career opportunities in hospitality. So when you start, no matter where you begin at the entry-level position in hospitality, there's room for growth, and there's story after story, and we're hearing more and more of them lately, of people explaining their own journeys and the very rewarding careers that they've ended up in, and the kind of economic impact their careers are having on their local communities and our state. So we're very excited about that conversation continuing.
Bill, what are your thoughts on minimum wage and the competition right now, competing for staff with maybe larger establishments that can have higher wages?
Sure. I think that it's a challenge for our industry for sure. Finding people is, and wages are a piece of that. Historically speaking, we believe in the free market setting the wages. But right now, I think it'd be pretty hard to find many of us who are paying minimum wage or even close to minimum wage. It is supply and demand, and the labor force is demanding more, and we're paying it right now. I think it's especially problematic though right now because of some of the issues we talked about earlier. So many of our establishments have been closed or close to closed, running really low occupancy rates, and even the rooms that we had been selling, we're selling for a lot less money than we're selling before that. So less revenue makes it harder to pay your employees more as well. So it's certainly going to be a challenge for us, but I do think it's part of the free market.
Tom, I'd love for you to add something on this. The minimum wage and competition for staff with higher wages.
Well, the minimum wage is practically non-existent in this community for the last 15 years. You use the minimum wage for entry-level people that are 14, 15, 16 years old. It's their first job. And quite frankly, they shouldn't be paid $15 an hour. But if you look at, I don't think that the Dells area with their 5,000 jobs that have to be filled every single year are concerned at all about minimum wage because of what Bill said. The free market will take care of it. And prior to COVID, the average wage here for the summer probably was $12, $13 an hour. So it was almost double what minimum wage was because it didn't exist. I can't speak for a lot of the urban areas because they have a higher population base and what's going on. But all I can say is that there's a direct correlation between the prices of the goods, the rooms, the restaurants, and so on, and your wages. People have to mark up their menu prices if they're paying those types of things. So it's the free marketplace handling its situation. In our case here, as I mentioned earlier, without the J1s, we have a combined population of 5,000 people in Wisconsin Dells. And I would say that the 80 or 90% of them work in the hospitality industry, and the majority of them are in management positions where minimum wage doesn't even factor into it. They're all salaried personnel. They've got good jobs, and that's the beauty of this industry. Is we start people out maybe washing dishes their first summer, and if they want to stay in the hospitality industry, they work their way all the way up. And I could write a book on the number of people that have worked for us over the last 50 years and how they evolved staying in our industry and what they're doing today.
Thanks, Tom. And we're going to stick with you now. I'm shifting the conversation to relief. Some attractions saw relief with the CARES Act money, food and drink and venues included in there. How would you rate that, Tom? How would you rate the relief?
I don't know if Wisconsin Dells could have weathered 2020 without especially the PPP program. Just our commercial, our local bank here in the Dells. Last year, we had 323 businesses apply for the PPP, and we funded almost $35 million of PPP. Now, you put that into 500 businesses in this community, it goes a long way on survival for them. When the second program came out, we had 281 people apply for the PPP, and that represented $32 million. Those that who applied the first time didn't qualify for the second go around had a decent summer because they had drive-through. They added a second lane for drive-throughs at their restaurant and so on and so forth. So we had some people here that had banner summer or a banner year in 2020 because they were able to adjust their business model to accommodate it. But without that $70 million of which our community bank supported, this community would be really in a real world of hurt. Now, I don't know how many EID loans in total were given here, but I know that there's at least 45 businesses through the Bank of Wisconsin Dells that have EID loans. And that, again, those are 3% loans, which got them through the tough time and got them to a situation where they can try to be successful in 2021. So those programs were unbelievably good. Where the void is, and Bill mentioned it earlier, our hotels here that play to transients are going to recover one heck of a lot faster than those hotels that have 40-50% of their business based on meetings and conventions, because it's going to take a longer time for those to come back. Unfortunately, to date, there has been no COVID relief support for those properties who not only lost their normal business, but meetings and conventions are a critical part of it. Same thing is true with all the attractions and the amusements. The venues got relief from the state program, which I think the max on it was $400,000, and we had some wonderful places like the Fireside Theater in Fort Atkinson that were devastated by it, and I'm certain that $400,000 helped get them to this summer so they could reopen and become a viable business. So I can't say enough about the policies that were put in place to help the businesses, but there still are voids. And I've talked to Governor Evers' administration about don't forget the ones that were left behind, because they're hurting just as much as the restaurant industry or the venues. And Bill can talk more about what the hotel incentive program was. I think it was on a per room basis, but if the government hadn't stepped in and created those things, our economy would have probably not been able to recover.
Yeah, Bill, hotel and lodging in Wisconsin got $20 million in grants from the CARES money from the governor. You also mentioned earlier you guys took advantage of some of the federal PPP and some other stuff there. Are you asking for more now from this American Rescue Plan Act?
We certainly are. We're talking with the governor's administration and trying to get some specific targeted aid to lodging facilities that need it. Like Tom mentioned, there are places that are obviously doing great, especially with the spike in leisure travel. but there are still people that are operating at a huge loss right now. So we're asking for more targeted relief but for those folks again that tend to focus on the business and in meetings and convention travel. But we're hopeful something will come of that. There's also at the federal level, there's some new legislation that's been introduced. It's the Safe Hotel Jobs Act. And that would go directly to help support keeping people on payroll in the hotel industry. And while I'm hopeful something will pass on that, if it does, it would be a long time from now. And quite honestly, a lot of those properties can't hold on that long. It was just introduced, and we all know Congress doesn't do very many things fast. So if it were to pass, I'd say that the earliest we'd see any relief from them would be probably in October range. So right now it's really vital when we're looking at some of these meeting and convention hotels and people that support the business traveler that just isn't traveling yet, to make sure that they can keep their lights on.
Yeah. And we're about halfway through our discussion today. So I'm going to give another shout out to our sponsors for making this event possible. So thank you, Madison Gas and Electric Company, University Research Park, Wisconsin Technology Council, and the Phelps-Hammes Group. Now, Secretary Sayers, I want to know what the Department of Tourism's role is in getting relief to the businesses that you advocate for. So, I mean, are these, are you talking to the governor's office, or do you have maybe some inside scoop of what's coming?
Well, this was certainly a new role for us last year, and I did hear from Tom, Bill, and others as they explained what was needed, and that was really helpful. We've really appreciated that feedback, and we have been able to pass that along as the money comes in and as the programs are crafted. And actually, here at the Department of Tourism, for the first time ever, we helped administer federal grant money, which is, it turns out, kind of a lift. We helped get $12 million out the door to destination marketing organizations at the end of the year. And we were really happy to be a part of that. As you know, then there were other programs set up throughout government. There was the $20 million for lodging, $15 million for live music, $10 million for movie theaters, another $15 million for nonprofits. So it is a team effort as this comes in and as we get these programs up and running and money out the door. We're really encouraged that the governor has said that for this ARPA, the upcoming funds, $50 million will go toward tourism, another $600 million for small businesses. We're still waiting for what that looks like, what the details are, but we're excited to be a part of that solution and to move the money as quickly as possible, because as you're hearing from Tom, Bill, and others, it's urgent now. It's needed now.
And I have one more question for you along those lines. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grants, that's a federal grant program through the Small Business Administration. Those checks should have started getting to venues this week. They've waited very long for those. And some want the governor to give more money from the state's allocation of that federal stimulus to venues. Is that something you can see happening, targeted relief towards entertainment venues that had to be closed this whole time?
I can't really speak to how it will be broken out or what it'll look at like, but can just confirm that there's a lot of need, and probably, the more funds, the better right now. And we're happy that folks are continuing to let us know what's needed, how it's needed, how best to structure these programs. That's all good information.
Yeah. Tom, is there anything else you wanted to add about the venue grants in particular?
Well, the venue grants were excellent, and then of course the federal, as you mentioned, the check should start coming now. Now, I own the Crystal Grand Music Theater. We do not operate it; it's leased out to an operator. They applied for the venue grant and got the max from the state level, and they're waiting for their check to come from because obviously they haven't had a concert in well over a year. It's pretty hard for them to pay rent when they don't have concerts. So that's been critical to them. But again, as I mentioned, there are duck operations, boat operations, other amusements that were hit just as hard as the venues were, and they haven't been addressed yet. And I'm hoping that the governor and his administration will recognize that. And the same thing holds true with those hotels they're capital intense businesses. It costs a lot of money to build a hotel, and doesn't make any difference if you're playing to tourists or if you're playing to sports teams or whether you're playing to meetings and convention. If you've lost your segment, you're in real trouble. So I hope they go back and look at the meetings and convention, because we've worked so hard statewide to have a presence in meeting and convention, because it's just a wonderful, Wisconsin's such a wonderful place to visit, and we have so much diversity here. But it's going to take a while for those meetings to come back.
That's right. And I'm going to shift the subject now to marketing. Wisconsin has really been pushing the great outdoors, and for good reason. We have more than 15,000 lakes, awesome state parks, and it was something that we could all do while staying socially distanced this past year. So Secretary Sayers, is that still the marketing plan for Wisconsin?
Yes, and you're right. More than 15,000 lakes, 43,000 miles of rivers and streams, more than 50% of the state covered in forest, 2 Great Lakes. I mean, the list goes on. We are an absolute treasure when it comes to outdoor recreation. And it's a good thing we are, because it does drive travel decisions, especially among younger audiences, which is a new focus for us this year. Those audiences, that 25 to 44-year-old range, are very motivated by outdoor recreation. And they also happen to be the audience that spends the most overnights, which means hotel tax. They happen to just spend more. They indulge a little more. They often travel in a larger party size, another indicator of more spending. And we're over indexing in age groups 45 and older, but we're under indexing 25 to 44. So we're focusing on those folks, and we're talking to them, yes, about outdoor recreation, but we're also talking about, if that's what motivates you to get here, how else will you spend your vacation? We know that these audiences are looking for a lot of options, a lot of ways to make different opportunities or different memories, and to make everyone in their travel party happy. And so that can look like unique stays. It can look like, farm to table restaurants or culturally diverse cuisine that we are known for. And it can look like any kind of attraction, you name it. It can look like downtowns and urban areas just coursing with character. So we're trying to put it all together, even as we say, Wisconsin may have been overlooked when it came to outdoor recreation in the past, and that's just not, we don't want that anymore. We're going to fix that problem and make sure folks know this is a bucket list location if you are looking to get outside.
Yeah, and our viewers also want to know, if you're targeting people still within driving distance, or are you looking at flights now? Because Wisconsin Airlines have added a lot of flights this year.
Really exciting about all the direct flights and new flights being added. That's great. We also are hearing at the same time that 2021 is the return of the Great American Road Trip. That's great news for Wisconsin. We have traditionally had about 90% of our travelers arriving by personal vehicle. And the indicators are that will continue or even increase going forward. So we actually didn't know how to answer all these questions, like what was the mind of the traveler coming out of the pandemic. So we turned to our 3 biggest data vendors to ask them, where do you think the ROI is going to be this year? They came up with a proprietary propensity to visit model, it's called, and we're really proud of it. I don't know of any other state department of tourism that's looking at the data insights in this way. But they came back to us with, here's where we think you can get that return on investment, and here are the markets where you can afford to go in, make a big impression, and actually convert folks to travel. And so we're in 12 markets, and they do happen to all be drive market this year.
All right. And Bill, and thoughts on this from you too, because you are both leisure and work travel. It's all going to impact you. So yeah, thoughts on targeting out-of-staters and people either a flight away or a drive away?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all important, obviously, and I think the Department of Tourism has done a fantastic job in putting together a plan and really looking at the data and the numbers and making data-driven decisions. Of course, we're all excited to see flights coming back. I think both on the leisure side and the business side. But spending money to get travelers to put heads in beds is one of the most important things that we can do right now. So luckily, I think we have a lot of folks in Wisconsin that understand that. we're waiting, as Ann mentioned before, for the Joint Finance Committee to make decisions on the tourism budget, and certainly hopeful that that they give Ann's department the resources that they need to get the word out there. I also want to mention, and maybe just circle back a little bit to the prior piece of the conversation, that the Department of Tourism did a good job when it came to the grant program for the destination management organizations, the DMOs, because they also play a key role in this and really helping determine what the best messaging for their markets are, and bringing in the leisure traveler, the business traveler, and the groups and sports and everything else too. So it's not it shouldn't be an either or bucket at all, I don't think, but I think that the Department of Tourism is doing a good job at taking a look at the markets that are driving value and bringing travelers to Wisconsin.
Yeah, Tom, thoughts from you on bringing in travelers to Wisconsin, to your attractions?
Well, you've hit on a very important subject. People have to understand why you need a Department of Tourism. And if you look at it and segment it as a pyramid, and the Department of Tourism is the foundation of that pyramid. Their job is to go outside of the Wisconsin, inside Wisconsin, and promote that Wisconsin is a great place to come and vacation. It's a great place to come and do business. Then the next level up are the DMOs that Bill spoke of. A DMO cannot go to St. Louis if the state hasn't already had a presence there. And then the top part is the individual businesses. Kalahari can't go on their own to Chicago and spend the amount of money that it would need without having Wisconsin Department of Tourism there, DMOs there, and then they can come on top of it. The biggest problem we've had for the Department of Tourism, they do not have enough resources to do the job that they have to do. I've been fighting this battle for 50 years. And I get it from legislators all the time. Why do you need to spend money, or why does the state need to spend money promoting tourism? Well, it is a very important industry, but if you don't understand the dynamics of that pyramid I just explained to you, and today it's even worse because there's a big difference between the way we promoted transient tourism 30 or 40 years ago compared to how we're doing it today. Anne has a horrendous task of trying to segment her markets and do justice to all of them, because she's got a big job on her plate, and quite frankly, she doesn't have enough money to do it. Back in 2000, when Tommy Thompson went to Washington to be in the Bush cabinet, we had a $15 million advertising budget. Now that's 20 years ago, or 21 years ago. The buying power, and she's down to $12 million. It's just not enough to do justice to what the job the department has to do. But it's a very difficult argument to convince legislators. If she gets the $1.5 million, I'll be the happiest guy in the world, but it's far short of what she needs.
Secretary, we have another question. Well, Tom, hopefully legislators are listening to this panel right now. But Secretary, another audience question is the outlook for vaccinated visitors. People from, this viewer sounds like they're from Europe and they like to visit Madison, and they just want to know, are they going to be able to come to Wisconsin, or what does that look like?
Sure, and I'll address that in a sec. I want to thank Tom. Has been such a sage when it comes to explaining how this all works and being an advocate for the department. I'm so grateful. But he's absolutely correct. Our competitive set is the other Midwestern states, and they are all outpacing us to different degrees. And at the same time, we in Wisconsin have two critical key markets in Minneapolis and Chicago, and they're very expensive. And that's different than what other states are facing. And we're losing share of voice, especially in Chicago right now. It becomes more expensive every year in those places. And as long as we hold steady, or even if we make incremental steps forward, we're continuing to lose our power of being able to talk to those critical travelers. So I'm really grateful for it, Tom, and everyone. I really feel very united in the tourism industry right now. The folks we're all saying the same thing, and that feels good. Very hopeful for today and being able to retain that 1.5 million. In terms of vaccinated visitors, I mean, you're seeing it open up every day. New rules are coming out. So even the urban areas that were lagging a little bit are looking really positive. And despite, even that, there are a lot of pivots have been made. And so you're seeing opportunities everywhere to get out and make those memories and do it in a safe way. So it's incredible the amount of changes and updates and innovation that this industry has gone above and beyond to make it a safe and memorable experience for visitors, no matter what it is you're looking to do when you're here. So yes, come from Europe, come to Madison, come to Milwaukee, come to our Northwoods. You're going to have a great time. We're ready.
Bill, I want to jump to you because you mentioned, I think you mentioned earlier, it might take about 3 years for the hotel and lodging to fully recover. I'm curious if what I said was correct. When is recovery for you guys, and what's that going to look like?
Yeah, it's you're right. 2024 is what we've seen from the various national sources that do some of that research. And I think a lot of it comes from the business group travel side. We know that last year, as a country, business travel was down about 85%. And there are a lot of hotels and lodging facilities that rely on business travel for their livelihood. But a majority throughout the country actually rely on business and group travel for more than half of their revenue. So it is a big number, and it is going to take a long time to get there. And I guess the other piece of it is that our business isn't like other industries, say manufacturing, where you're making some type of a widget, being a lawnmower, a snowblower, or whatever it is, that we can't just keep producing them, waiting for people to open up their pocketbooks and then start selling them again and recover from that. Every time a hotel room goes empty, we don't have the opportunity to sell that again. So that means that it's going to take longer for us to get back. We still have to pay our mortgages and pay for our utilities and all of those things that happened during the pandemic. So even as business picks up, businesses are going to be paying the price of the pandemic for quite some time. So I think that's why those numbers are where they're at. I'm hopeful they're wrong. I'm not confident, but I'm hopeful they're wrong. I know that my colleagues that run associations and some of the business folks I talk to have that same pent up travel demand that the leisure market seems to have, but they're just going to be slower to come back.
Yeah, and Secretary Sayers, you had said in a previous interview that it could be up to 4 years before tourism fully recovers. That's the industry as a whole. Is that still the case?
That was the most recent national projection, but I tend to feel leisure travel is going to blow it out of the water here immediately, and we're seeing every indication that that's true. And then this business travel piece is the question mark, and it's going to come back, but it's going to look more like a dial than a switch. And I don't know exactly how to predict that, except we do know that we need to get out in front of those meeting planners and individual businesses and just make sure they know what incredible world-class accommodations we have for meetings and conventions, and keep driving at it. I don't know what to predict other than that, although I do look at the data every single day and feel fairly optimistic on the leisure front.
Tom, what about you? Are you optimistic that your membership, the attractions you represent, are going to recover? And when does that happen?
Well, there's no question they're going to recover, and we're well on our way now. Wisconsin Dells will attain 100% return of their transient tourist visitors. Right now, we're approaching 40% on small meetings, and you're going to see in the fall a real increase in that. And they're projecting here that they're going to be at 60% of their 2019 meeting and convention business. Now, we're a little bit different here than a lot of Bill's membership that are in urban areas. People fly to go to meetings and so on. That's going to take 4 or 5 years to get back. And in some cases, it may never come back because businesses have found out that they can operate without going into an office building in Chicago. They can do it virtually, just like we're doing right now. So the jury's out on that part of it. The other issue is the sports marketing, which we've been heavily involved in, and that is back to 100% up. And all the cheerleading camps, the gymnastic camps, the basketball, the soccer, the lacrosse, all those things are coming back strong. But we have a little advantage there that we're a rural area, and it's going to take longer for the urban areas to recover than it is going to be the rural areas.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because that was another question of mine. Is there going to be a divide in recovery between rural Wisconsin and urban Wisconsin? Secretary, is there anything you could add to that one?
Yeah, we definitely saw that in the numbers in 2020, but I think that will begin to even out because these urban areas have a lot to offer. You know, outdoor recreation is both urban and rural in Wisconsin, which is another great niche offering that we hold. And then all the pivots and the fact that the regulations are loosening up a little bit. On the leisure front, I really think that's going to even out. Tom is probably right that when it comes to business travel, we're just going to have to keep pushing and see what happens here. But like he said, the fall is looking very good. In fact, pretty much every weekend of September, October, November, there's multiple large events or meetings happening, and they're in urban areas. So we'll see, but again, optimistic.
Bill, can you touch on urban-rural differences? I think you touched on a little bit before.
I think I did. I think, you know, like we've said, that a lot of the more national or international meetings, people flying in and whatnot, it hurts more in the urban areas where they have more of that business. But I don't want to paint the broad stroke of it being a urban versus rural thing either, because there are hotel and lodging facilities and conference centers in cities that aren't Milwaukee or aren't Madison, that do rely on putting together corporate events or business events or association meetings. So, you know, well, perhaps most of the folks in a lot of those areas cater to the leisure market. There are also people that cater to the business travel in many corners of the state. So I don't think it's simply an urban versus rural. I think that's a easier way to put it, but let's face it, there are going to be people in say the Milwaukee or Madison area that do okay on the leisure side, and there are going to be people you know, in the North Woods that are still hurting on the meeting and convention side. So I think taking all of that into account, and where the numbers show, of course, where most of the meetings do happen are in the more urban areas, and that's why they're hurting longer. But
Another audience member is asking about partnerships between different sectors within tourism, and looking at ways that maybe cultural organizations or hotels or attractions can partner up to bolster each other up. I don't know who wants to take a stab at that one. Secretary, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. I love that question because, as we know, we're a little underfunded, and we're looking for every opportunity to bounce back as strong as possible. So partnerships are a critical piece of that. A couple new initiatives that are happening right now. One, we did roll out the Shared Wisconsin Brand Promise at a recent, the Governor's Conference on Tourism. This is an opportunity for all businesses, all organizations, everyone associated with tourism or otherwise in Wisconsin, to fold under a shared brand. So essentially, for every advertising dollar that we spend in state and out, that we're telling a similar story, that we're at least not at odds. And this is important. Other states are doing this well, and we need to start doing it too, because we need to say who we are, and it's just as important as saying who we aren't with every dollar that we spend. So this is one way that we are partnering with other organizations to just say who we are and why we are so wonderful here in Wisconsin. We also have more co-op opportunities here at the Department of Tourism than we've ever had before. So certainly we're continuing to offer new and interesting ways in the marketing front, but also public relations, research. We're just looking for ways to maximize every dollar that we are together spending to get in front of consumers.
So we're running close to time here. So my next question is going to be for the three of you, and I just want to know what you're looking forward to either this summer or, you know, post-pandemic, whenever that is, or if it's declared or what, I don't know. But Tom, let's start with you. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to it. I don't have to spend the summer working with the 4 counties around here's health departments and trying to prove to them that we could keep our businesses open and do it safely. And I keep telling them that tourism is a very fragile industry, and people will not come if they do not feel safe. So we had a big job ahead of us, and we tried to impress upon them that we can do it safely. And every time I pick up the paper, the Dells is going to have a catastrophe on Memorial Day weekend. Then it was 4th of July weekend, and then it was Labor Day week. And guess what? It never happened because our businesses are smart enough to know how to handle their businesses, how to provide a product safely to them. And so I'm just happy I don't have to deal with that for another summer.
Bill, what about you? What are you looking forward to this summer or post-pandemic?
I can't wait to be with people again on a regular basis. I'm a people person, and so I love this job. I'm in hospitality and associations together. I mean that both of those businesses thrive on bringing people together and making connections. So I'm really going to make a concentrated effort to get out to all corners of the state and work with our members and potential members and make sure that the lodging industry is well represented moving forward.
Yep. And Secretary Sayers, you get the last word. What are you looking forward to this summer or post-pandemic?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some smiles on the faces of our hospitality industry, hopefully just enjoying with them some good news starting to come in and making big plans for the future. And setting that new normal. Personally, I am trying to plan a trip with the girls, but we can't even decide where we want to go because there's so many places on everybody's list. So that's kind of a fun process. And I'm a live music person, so I can't wait. I'm going to Mile of Music. I'm going to State Fair. I'm going to Summerfest. Anywhere there's music, I'm going to try to be there this year.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. I miss like seeing the full face of my server, my waitress or waiter, and the live band. So I'm excited for that. But I think that brings us to the end, and thank you guys for being here today, Secretary Ann Sayers, Bill Elliott, and Tom Deal. It was a great conversation. I want you guys to come back again. And thank you also to our sponsors for making this happen. We've got Madison Gas and Electric Company, University Research Park, Wisconsin Technology Council, and the Phelps Hamas Group. So thank you again, and have a great rest of the day and weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.